This week we're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. What the rich teach their children about money that the middle class and poor don't. What does that mean? It means throughout the book it discusses both worlds Robert grew up in, how very vivid stories he tells about living with his poor dad, which is his real dad, and his opinion on education, on jobs, on work, on liabilities, how the poor work for money, compared to his rich dad, which is his best mate's dad, and his opinion on education, on building assets, on being self-educated, and about jobs. And through the book, you learn about the difference between an asset and a liability, how rich dad and poor dad's opinions and viewpoints are very much opposite. They're like a paradox between them. One believes in not taking risks, the other one believes in taking risks but managing them risks. One believes in working hard for a job, while the other believes in studying hard to work to buying or starting a company. So there's two different of opinions throughout the whole book, which Robert tries to teach from his teachings of living in both them worlds. And what I, from reading the book, taking away from it. So tomorrow we're going to talk about perspective and what perspective from the book means. So I'll see you tomorrow. Do take care. Today we're talking about perspective, or my takeaway, biggest takeaway from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. In the book, Robert, the author, gets exposed to two different opinions and views. His poor dad, which is his real dad, and his rich dad, which is his best mate's dad. So his poor dad's viewpoint, perspective, is you work hard, get good grades, start working for a company, work hard within that company and get promoted, and relying on your wage, your salary every year, to not taking any risks, playing it safe, buying your own home, as that can be the biggest asset, and relying on state benefits, both in work and in retirement. Rich dads was the polar opposite. Education is only good if you want to enter a profession as a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, a banker. That education doesn't teach you the right skills about money and how to overcome adversity. That taking risks is a good thing as long as they manage risks. That learning to start a company or build a company or buy a company, to learning about stocks and shares and bonds, that assets, real assets, what create income, is what every person should be working towards. That he believes that state benefits create needy and weak people. That we've got to work in self-education in order to have the riches we deserve. So there's two different viewpoints, and that's the perspective I've taken away from the book, because there's two different viewpoints which I can relate to. Poor Dad's attitude, his perspective, his view in life, because that's what I was told growing up. Get a good education, get a good job, work within that job. And it's still like that today. You know, you've got to work, which we do, we've got bills to pay, but his attitude is to then, with that wage, get an house, you know, a car on finance, rent, you know, to live a lifestyle within that budget. So I can relate to Poor Dads. My shift in mentality has changed to Rich Dads from reading the book. His perspective, that it's on an individual to be able to educate themselves and to learn. And more than that, the biggest lesson I've learned is that there can be different views on every aspect of his life. It's up to us to search and find them views. Look for the positives in every situation. And it has such meaning right now in this pandemic, being in lockdown, this year of separation, of a new norm, and having the right mindset and view the situation we're in is so vitally important. So always look for the positives. Always ask the right people from their views. If it's the opposite to yours, that's a good thing. Embrace looking for different ways to view life. I, for one, have learned to, through self-education, be able to move myself forward and change my mindset, change my outlook and views on life, change my perspective. I might not be having a good day, but I find good in every day. Is a great saying. Because there is good in every day. It's our perspective on that day, on whether we see that. And we can see that if we choose to. But we get fixated in our own mindset, in our own viewpoint, and believe that that's the only viewpoint we've got. I made that mistake, and it wasn't until I opened my eyes and educated myself that I saw different viewpoints, and that benefited myself, my life, and changed my perspective. So our viewpoint is not necessarily the right viewpoint. We have to look for other viewpoints, more positive viewpoints. So that's my takeaway. It's perspective. Tomorrow we're talking about financial literacy. Just means assets and liabilities, and the different viewpoints, opinions of Rich Dad and Poor Dad. Until then, take care. We're talking about assets and liabilities from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So let's delve right in. What is a liability? What is an asset? A liability takes money from the income we bring in. It's our debts to which we have to pay each month. An asset generates money. It brings money into our salary, our income. So there's a very big difference between an asset and a liability. So how does the middle class and poor in Rich Dad, Poor Dad actually create liabilities, and what that means? So I've built a little graph, I know, getting a bit technical, just to try and explain a little bit more about a liability. I think for this one, we potentially will stick with liabilities, and tomorrow we'll talk about assets, because it's very important to know definitely the difference between each one. Because for me and for you, as money controls our actions, our emotions, getting into debt, desiring nice things is short term. It's only a short term fix. We still have to pay that money. So let me show you the graph. This is what I've put together in terms of income and salary coming in. Then you have your expenses, assets if you've got any, but liabilities. So when we get paid from our job, our salary goes into a salary box, is income, because that's his only income we've got coming in. We then have to pay our liabilities, which is our rent, mortgage, car loans, credit cards, any other debts you have. Once we've paid that, we have to go in and pay our expenses. So it's food, as clothes, as utilities. It could be rent and mortgage as an expense rather than a liability, but it's something we have to pay every month. School fees and any travel we make. By the end of it, that is what we got in terms of money left. So when we talk about in the book about assets and liabilities, we can see from this graph that when we get paid our salary, it goes round, we have to pay his liabilities and up to his expenses before we have that luxury payment. I'm going to put this down because my arm's hurting. So that's it. So that's a liability. The problem with liability is that as our expenses increases, our taxes from the government increase, our salary gets squeezed more, our expenses still need paying, and our liabilities still remain the same, but we've still got to pay that out each month. And so as pot we've got left to spend on doing nice things, going to nice places, gets squeezed even more. We have an issue in terms of us as a society, or from my takeaway, is that we buy luxuries first. We build up these liabilities in is that liabilities column, and as that increase, our salary gets squeezed because we still got to pay his expenses, and that means that as money at the end of the month is less in the pot. What that does is it boxes us in. These are my takeaways. We box us into what we have to pay and how we have to pay it. So it takes away our freedom to want to do something else, to start a new career, to think long term, to maybe start saving and maybe creating some assets, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So we don't get to keep as much as there's money, is my takeaway from this. Again, I keep saying takeaways because these are the things that by reading the book, these are the things I've taken away from it. That we end up working hard just to pay as liabilities. And as salary gets squeezed through our expenses, as liabilities, it it really does put the pressure and the stress, which is why we have a lot of stress when it comes to money. So for me, my takeaway again is that I've got to learn to be good with money. That I've got to try and educate my children about the different aspects of a salary, liabilities, and then expenses and what's left. And educate them about assets and the difference between that. The most powerful tool, I believe, to overcome anything is self-education, is reading, is learning, is getting a different perspective, a different view. Makes us grow as people because we're more rounded in our knowledge, in our viewpoints. I know this is a longer video, but I just want to make those points, what both Rich Dad Poor Dad and what liabilities mean, and my takeaways from that. So tomorrow we're going to cover assets, what, in the words of Robert the author, what the rich teach them, their children. Today we covered what the poor and the middle class teach us. So until tomorrow, stay safe, take care. Part 2, assets. Yesterday we learned about liabilities and what the middle class and poor in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad is. Today we're going to concentrate on assets and what the rich teach their children. So what is an asset? An asset is something you put your money into, which generates an income over a long period of time. Could be forever, but it's what grows your money without really having to work for that money. So I have created another graph just to illustrate how in the book the way it's taught is shown. So this is a rich income statement. As you can see, a lot different is the assets. So they have assets what drive the salary. It's what they get paid there. But they also do, from them assets, which drives to pay salary, they then take that salary and pay it towards any liabilities, because they class it as a liability. So as they earn their income, they pay their income towards their liabilities. Then they pay the government their taxes. These are government taxes here. Then the rest of their money goes into their expenses. And then from their expenses, they create their pile of money. Which, for rich people, they tend to reinvest back into assets to grow more assets, to bring in more of income in a salary. So they can pay the liabilities first, the taxes second, and then they have the expenses third. So that's the way the rich work theirs. I hope that's clear and you can understand that. What does that mean? It means that for rich people, they fear not having money, but they don't fear losing money. What does that mean? It means that they're willing to invest in different asset growing commodities, asset growing income, and if they lose, then that's fine, they've lost money, but they'll keep trying again because they know that once they get one right, then that'll always generate a salary income. They like to try and keep as much of their money as they can in order to reinvest in assets. And that's where they're saying, in terms of the book, the rich don't work for money, they have money work for them. Which you can understand from assets, how by putting money into a certain asset, that asset grows and generates an income, which creates a salary. And if they keep funneling their leftover money back into assets, that carries on going in that circle. And the taxes after they've paid the liabilities get paid through the government, which is, you know, it's mind-blowing, really. But we see it every day in the news. We see how, you know, the rich avoid paying taxes and how they live such luxury lifestyles. And you can see how, if they funnel it through the salary into, you know, some kind of holding company, pay the liabilities first, then pay the taxes second, then, you know, whatever their expenses are. You know, we all have expenses and we can't claim it against the tax we pay on his income. What we do, in terms of us, we tend to earn more money, and through earning more money, increase our own debts back into our liabilities. So we keep creating this circle where we just constantly having to pay out. We get a job, salary, get his taxes, gets paid automatically. Then we have to pay his liabilities, expenses, and then what's left. My takeaways from reading the book is that we should be more concentrating on paying down his debts, to continue to drive his debts as liabilities down and down, which creates more leftover cash at the end. That leftover cash should be then put into, not savings accounts, but into creating some form of assets which generate its own income. You know, my takeaway from that is that's where we can do. So for me, whether you're an introvert, entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, there you go. If you're an entrepreneurial, so you work within a company, you can still generate the same assets, because we could get paid in his job. Let me get my board back. We can get paid in his job. Here, we can, you know, his salary and his taxes get taken to the government. We can lower down these debts, so we have less we have to pay towards his liabilities. That goes down, minus that goes down. So then when we come up to paying our expenses, we have more in the pot. We can use more of this pot to save, to then funnel back into creating some assets. By generating some assets over time, that assets will help towards paying his salary. We could use his assets to pay his salary, to pay his liabilities, to then pay his taxes, to then his expenses, and continue that funnel. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm sure I will hear in the comments whether that is the case. So we have options, whether we are entrepreneurial and we want to go do something ourselves, or whether we're intrapreneurial, which means we like working for the same company. We can still create the same asset columns, which my takeaway from reading the book is what we should all be doing. We should be lowering our first to spend on nice things and get into debt for it first. Really, we should be funneling what we can save from a salary, bringing it back into assets, and creating income that way, something which will benefit us in years and years and years to come, and maybe one day overtake us job salary. So that's my takeaway, my input, which I'm sharing obviously with views. Through it all, and I keep coming back to this, the most powerfulest tool we have in order to create a rich income from the book is learning, is self-education. Through self-education, we have the motivation to be able to have the knowledge to action and build confidence in that. So my takeaways, as you can see, is to drive your debt down, drive your liabilities down, live within the means of what we earn, start saving more and more of us money so we can start educating ourselves on creating assets, and assets what generate income which can pay in years to come towards our salary. I mean, it seems quite simple. It is full of emotions, but action. But if we don't start, then how are we ever going to be good? So that's my takeaway for today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about fear, maybe. Why we, the middle class and the poor, don't. Talk about a little bit more about psychology from the book and my takeaways from it. So until then, sorry it's another long video. I hope it's clear in terms of what I've said. You can always go buy the book and read the book yourself. But yeah, until tomorrow, stay safe, take care. In Rich Dad Poor Dad, it talks about the different mindsets we have and what the rich mindset has to the middle class and poor, us, and the difference in those mindsets. So it does talk about fear, it does talk about laziness, bad habits, not focused, and talks quite candidly in the book about the differences between them, and you know what the rich think. Like, for an example, the rich believe a job, JOB, stands for just over broke. So, you know, the fear of not having money is the rich is fear. But our fear, our middle class poor fear, is to losing money, which the rich don't fear. I suppose my takeaway from it is we've all got a Chicken Little inside all of us. Chicken Little is, if you remember the story, is that doom is impending. And whenever we do something, especially when it's regarding money, we do believe that doom is going to come our way. The fear of losing money, it stops us from ever investing and creating assets. And we all meet people who say money doesn't interest them, but yet they get up every day and go to work just for that money. So in order to overcome our fear, we have to get really focused on what we want to achieve. That's a great way to start. We need to be able to not talk generic of what we want as a big goal at the end. It's getting specific about how we can create the steps to do that. How we can plan our steps, making those little steps. Self-education, as I've said, is the most powerfulest tool. And then it's going and it's actually actioning on what our plan is, making those small investments each day. executing, failing or not, but learning, and do it all over again and continue that cycle of doing that. We've got to be patient in making it happen. We can continue to as Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the author said, be lazy, living as bad habits, fear of losing money, and continue to have to work and pay the liabilities and expenses and have to put in the graft to do that. But we can put in the graft. We can sacrifice and work hard and pay his debts and get them down to a minimum, and then carry on working hard, self-education, put money away aside and start investing in some assets, get knowledgeable about assets. The issue we have as people is that we like to compare to others lifestyles, materialistic things. But remember, compare is a thief of joy. We'll only ever find unhappiness. We'll only ever find sadness in comparing. Which brings me back to your home is not an asset. In the book, that's quite controversial. But when you remember the graphs, what we're shown, what an asset is and what a liability is, you can see that actually there is truth once we gain a bit of knowledge behind that. It's about being intentional and actionable, and those around us, we are influenced by those around us and what they tell us we should and should not do. But we shouldn't be telling anybody if they're going out and doing it, because we're just putting a negative mindset onto them. We need to change his mindset. We need to, rather than I'm not smart enough, a closed mindset, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I can't afford it. That's a closed mindset. That don't create a creative mindset. So rather than think of it that way, we should be thinking it as, how can I be smart enough? What do I need to learn to be smart enough? I am good enough. I just need to take action. How can I be good enough? How can I afford it? What are the steps I need to do in order to create it? Maybe look at our peers, our people around us. Are they encouraging or are they zapping our energy to go do something? And we all get labelled with, my God, you've changed. But we've got to change, because if we don't, we stand still. We need to change in order to grow. So, from the book, what's inspired me and inspired me to do better is to learn more, self-educate more, and look to pay down my own debts and start investing in creating some kind of assets. And that's what I'm trying to do myself. That's what I'm gonna do. Not trying to do, gonna do myself. So, these are my takeaways from the book. There's more information, there's more, it delves deeper in. Same as the book from last week, Midas Touch, and all the books have more in-depth information we can read ourselves and take our own takeaways from the books. Action on what we've learned. So I know it's another fairly long video. I hope that you can learn to be good with money and make money work for you rather than work for money. Remember to be patient, to persevere and be persistent. Remember to be committed. Remember to be a bit selfish and ignore those around us who tell us we can't. As I've said, those who tell us we can't should be telling anybody they can if we're going out and doing it. We have the power within us to create a rich lifestyle, however that may look for you. But for me, working just to pay liabilities, just to pay debt, doesn't seem to be a good lifestyle to have. It's helped me to transform my mindset, and rather than educate my children and those around me to I can't afford it, I'm not good enough, etc., etc., to, you know, how can we afford it? How can I get good enough? What can I learn? And sacrificing your time to achieve it, sacrificing your time to put the effort in to learn. But not just to learn, to make notes on what you're learning, and then to go and start taking action. Being specific about the little steps you need to take in order to get to that big goal. And yeah, you might have to go on a few different roads to reach that goal. But if you don't go on the roads, you won't know whether it works or not. And it's all a learning process. We need to let go of fearing of losing money. And let's focus on fearing of not having money. Especially as we get older. As you know, it's my birthday, and yeah, I suppose, you know, it comes to the forefront even more as we get older. Do we want to continue that? What are we creating in terms of assets to be able to supplement us when we are older? So I know I've kind of gone on a bit of a rant, explaining a little bit about the book, but then my takeaways. But, you know, I believe in what we can do as individuals and as people. So go and take them actionable steps. Get uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable and learning something new and actioning it. Learn to fight your... For me, I have a boss voice and a ditch voice. Ditch voice plays most of the time, especially when I'm tired or hungry or I'm lacking confidence, and that ditch voice tells me to always give up, to not start another day, go through, I'm not good enough, all those, you know, that's my ditch voice that can live with us more times than not. But then I have the boss voice, which is more positive, is motivating. It's just like, yeah, let's just get it done. Let's just start and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we can do that. We need to take these steps and we'll do it every day. And we'll have dreams and we have big goals and we plan and we do and we have those steps and we find the flow from doing it. Find your boss voice. Change how the ditch voice works by growing. So that's this week over. Next week, we'll find out on Monday what the book will be and my takeaways, my lessons I've learnt from it. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. Stay strong. Until then, goodbye.